Could a single agreement truly bring peace, or did it seal the fate of a nation? Welcome to Class Bites. Today, we're diving into the Munich Agreement and the devastating betrayal it represented. How fragile is a promise of peace when it is built upon the sacrifice of another's sovereignty? On the 30th of September, 1938, four of Europe's great powers convened in Munich to sign an agreement that they hoped would avert a catastrophic war. Representatives from Nazi Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and Italy put their names to a document that would forever be remembered not for the peace it secured, but for the betrayal it represented. The Munich Agreement, as it came to be known, permitted the German annexation of the Sudetenland, a strategically vital and industrially significant region located in western Czechoslovakia. The official justification rested on the presence of a significant ethnic German population within this territory, a pretext that masked a far more aggressive expansionist ambition. In a stark illustration of the power dynamics at play, the one nation whose fate was being decided, Czechoslovakia, was conspicuously absent from the conference table. Its government was not invited to participate in the deliberations. Instead, it was presented with a finished accord and, under immense pressure from its own allies, Britain and France, was compelled to reluctantly agree to its own dismemberment. The architect of this crisis, Adolf Hitler, had masterfully played on the European powers' deep-seated fear of another continental war. Just 4 days before the agreement was signed, in a fiery speech delivered at the Berlin Sportpalast on the 26th of September, 1938, he had presented his demands as both reasonable and final. He declared to the world that the Sudetenland was unequivocally the last territorial demand I have to make in Europe. This public proclamation was reinforced by private assurances given directly to the British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, a man desperate to secure what he would later call peace for our time. Hitler personally guaranteed Chamberlain that once the Sudeten problem was amicably resolved, Germany harbored no further territorial claims anywhere in Europe. He went even further, explicitly stating that he had no additional interest in the continued existence of the Czech state itself. For a brief, fleeting moment, it seemed as though the specter of war had been banished and that the policy of appeasement had succeeded. This illusion of peace, however, proved to be tragically short-lived. The ink on the Munich Pact was barely dry when its promises began to unravel. In a stunning act of perfidy, less than 6 months after the agreement was celebrated, Nazi Germany violated its core tenets. On the 15th of March, 1939, the world watched as the guarantees made in Munich were revealed to be utterly worthless. Once again employing the cynical pretext of needing to protect ethnic Germans, German troops marched across the border, their destination not a contested frontier region, but the very heart of the Czechoslovak state. They advanced on Prague, the nation's capital, and swiftly occupied the remaining Czech provinces of Bohemia and Moravia. This was not a border adjustment. It was the complete and total subjugation of a sovereign nation. The dismemberment of Czechoslovakia was methodical and absolute. The occupied territories of Bohemia and Moravia were formally reconstituted as the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, a political entity directly controlled by and subservient to Germany. Simultaneously, Slovakia was declared a nominally independent state, though in reality it was a client state sympathetic to the Nazi regime, its autonomy a carefully constructed fiction. The final piece of the nation was carved away when Hungary, acting with the full consent and encouragement of Germany, occupied and annexed the easternmost province of Carpathian Ruthenia. In a matter of days, the country that had been sacrificed in Munich for the sake of European peace had been systematically erased from the map, its people and resources now under the dominion of expansionist powers. The prelude to this final invasion was a chilling display of intimidation. In the days leading up to the 15th of March, Hitler summoned the aging and frail Czechoslovakian president, Emil Hácha, to Berlin. This was not a meeting of equals or a diplomatic negotiation. It was an ultimatum. Delivered in the dead of night, Hácha was subjected to hours of immense psychological pressure, culminating in a direct and brutal threat. If he did not immediately sign away his country's independence, the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, would unleash a devastating bombing campaign on Prague. Faced with the prospect of his capital city being reduced to rubble and countless civilian lives being lost, the broken president capitulated. With his signature, the last vestiges of Czechoslovak sovereignty were formally surrendered. The very next morning, on the 15th of March, 1939, German troops crossed the border without resistance, taking complete control of Prague by the end of the day. For Britain and France, the seizure of the rest of Czechoslovakia was a profound and irreversible shock. The annexation of the Sudetenland could be rationalized, however tenuously, under the principle of national self-determination. The occupation of Prague, however, could not. It was a clear and undeniable act of conquest against a non-German population, demonstrating with brutal clarity that Hitler's promises were worthless and that his ambitions were boundless. The policy of appeasement, which had been championed by Chamberlain, was exposed as a catastrophic failure. Across Britain, public opinion, which had largely supported the Munich Agreement out of a desire to avoid war, changed drastically. The realization dawned that Hitler could not be reasoned with or contained through concessions. Chamberlain himself was forced to confront the futility of his efforts. In a speech delivered on the 17th of March, just 2 days after the fall of Prague, he publicly acknowledged the collapse of his policy. The man who had returned from Munich waving a piece of paper and promising peace now conceded that Hitler was engaged in a ruthless attempt to dominate the world by force. The Munich Agreement, he now understood, had meant nothing to the German dictator except as a strategic pause, a tool to neutralize opposition while he prepared his next move. The response from Britain and France was swift and decisive, marking the definitive end of the era of appeasement. In a direct reaction to the occupation of Czechoslovakia, the two nations extended a firm pledge of military support to Poland, guaranteeing its independence in the event of a German attack. The line had finally been drawn, but it had been drawn only after the complete destruction of one sovereign state and on the very precipice of a global conflict that would claim the lives of tens of millions. The false peace of 1938 had given way to the grim certainty of war in 1939. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more. Comment below with your thoughts or what you want to see next.